It was the tale of a little girl, a red velvet hood, a basket of treats, and a wolf who was much too clever for his own good. Once upon a time, at the edge of a great forest, there lived a little girl who was loved by everyone who met her. She had rosy cheeks, bright, curious eyes, and a smile that could warm even the coldest winter day. But the thing everyone noticed most about her was what she always wore, a beautiful red velvet riding hood that her grandmother had made for her. She loved that hood so much that she wore it everywhere she went. She wore it to the market. She wore it to pick flowers. She even wore it to bed sometimes when her mother wasn't looking. Because of this, everyone in the village called her Little Red Riding Hood. And after a while, she couldn't imagine being called anything else. Little Red lived with her mother in a cozy cottage with flower boxes in the windows and a vegetable garden in the back. Her father was a woodcutter who worked deep in the forest, and her grandmother lived alone in another little cottage on the other side of the woods. Little Red loved visiting her grandmother more than almost anything. Grandmother would tell her stories of the old days, teach her how to knit, and always have fresh cookies waiting. One bright spring morning, Little Red's mother called her into the kitchen. "Little Red dear," her mother said, "your grandmother isn't feeling well. I've packed a basket with some bread, honey, and a pot of butter to help her feel better. Would you take it to her today?" "Of course, Mother. I'll go right away." Her mother handed her the basket, which was covered with a checkered cloth, and knelt down to look her in the eyes. "Now listen carefully, my darling. Stay on the path through the forest. Don't dawdle or wander off. And whatever you do, do not talk to strangers. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mother," Little Red said, nodding seriously. "Stay on the path. Don't talk to strangers. I promise." She kissed her mother goodbye, pulled her red hood over her hair, and skipped out the door with the basket swinging on her arm. The path to grandmother's house wound through the great forest like a ribbon. Tall trees stretched up toward the sky, their branches forming a canopy of green that let through dancing spots of sunlight. Birds sang in the branches, and squirrels chattered as they leaped from tree to tree. Little Red walked along happily, humming a little tune and thinking about how glad grandmother would be to see her. But she didn't know that someone was watching her from the shadows between the trees. Before we find out who or what is lurking in those shadows, if you're enjoying this story, why not hit that subscribe button and ring the bell? That way, you'll never miss a fairy tale. Now, let's see what's hiding in the forest. A pair of yellow eyes gleamed in the darkness. It was a wolf, a big wolf with shaggy gray fur, a long pointed snout, and teeth as sharp as knives. He was the craftiest creature in all the forest, and he was very, very hungry. The wolf had been watching Little Red ever since she entered the woods. He licked his chops as he studied her, a plump little girl, all alone, with a basket that smelled delicious. Now, the wolf would have liked to gobble her up right then and there, but he was too clever for that. He knew that woodcutters worked in this forest, and if he attacked the girl on the path, someone might hear her scream. No, he needed a better plan. So he put on his friendliest face and stepped out onto the path. "Good morning, little girl," he called out in his smoothest voice. Little Red stopped. She remembered what her mother had said about not talking to strangers. But the wolf didn't look so scary. He was smiling, his tail wagging gently, looking for all the world like a friendly dog. "Good morning," she replied politely. "What a lovely day for a walk. the wolf said, falling into step beside her. "And what a beautiful red hood you're wearing. Tell me, where are you going on this fine morning?" But the wolf seemed so pleasant, and she didn't want to be rude. "I'm going to visit my grandmother," she said. "She lives in the cottage on the other side of the forest, near the 3 big oak trees. She's not feeling well, so I'm bringing her some bread and honey." The wolf's eyes sparkled with wicked delight, though he hid it well. "How kind you are," he said. "Your grandmother is very lucky to have such a thoughtful granddaughter. But tell me, have you noticed how beautiful the flowers are today? Just look at them, growing all through the forest. I'm sure your grandmother would love a fresh bouquet." Little Red looked around. The wolf was right, the forest was full of wildflowers, blue ones and yellow ones and purple ones, growing in sunny patches between the trees. "Oh, they are lovely," she said. "Grandmother does love flowers." "Then you simply must pick some," the wolf urged. "I'm sure she would prefer fresh flowers to plain old bread any day." Little Red hesitated. Her mother had told her to stay on the path, but surely picking a few flowers wouldn't hurt. Grandmother would be so happy to see them. "Perhaps just a few," she said, stepping off the path toward a patch of daisies. The moment her back was turned, the wolf grinned a terrible grin and raced away through the trees. He knew exactly where the grandmother's cottage was now, and he had a wicked plan forming in his cunning mind. He ran and ran, his paws barely touching the ground, until he reached the little cottage near the 3 big oak trees. Knock, knock, knock. "Who is it?" called a thin, elderly voice from inside. The wolf made his voice as high and sweet as he could. "It's Little Red Riding Hood, Grandmother. I've brought you bread and honey." "Oh, how wonderful," Grandmother replied happily. "Pull the bobbin and the latch will go up." The wolf pulled the bobbin. The latch went up, and he burst through the door. Grandmother screamed, but before she could run, the wolf pounced. However, this grandmother was tougher than she looked. She had lived in the forest her whole life and knew a thing or two about wolves. She grabbed her walking stick and swung it at the wolf, then darted into the big wooden wardrobe and locked herself inside. "You won't get me, you wicked creature," she shouted through the wardrobe door. The wolf scratched at the wardrobe, but it was solid oak and wouldn't budge. He growled in frustration, but then another idea popped into his crafty head. He spotted Grandmother's nightgown hanging on a hook and her nightcap sitting on the dresser. With a wicked chuckle, he put them on, climbed into Grandmother's bed, and pulled the covers up to his chin. "Now," he whispered to himself, "I'll just wait for that tasty little girl." Meanwhile, Little Red had picked the most beautiful bouquet of wildflowers. There were so many pretty ones that she had wandered deeper and deeper into the forest without even realizing it. When her basket was overflowing with blossoms, she suddenly remembered her errand. "Oh my, Grandmother must be wondering where I am." She hurried back to the path and ran the rest of the way to the cottage. When she arrived, she noticed that the door was slightly open. "That's strange," she thought. "Grandmother always keeps the door closed." "Grandmother?" she called, pushing the door open. "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood. I've brought you bread and honey and flowers." "Come in, my dear," came a strange, gruff voice from the bedroom. "Come closer so I can see you." Little Red walked into the bedroom and saw her grandmother lying in bed. The covers pulled up high, the nightcap pulled down low. Something seemed different. "Grandmother," Little Red said slowly, "what big ears you have." "All the better to hear you with, my dear," the wolf replied in his best grandmother voice. Little Red took a step closer. "Grandmother, what big eyes you have." Little Red frowned. Something was definitely wrong. She took one more step. "Grandmother, what big teeth you have." The wolf threw off the covers and leaped out of bed with a terrible snarl. "All the better to eat you with." Little Red screamed and ran. She raced out of the bedroom, through the cottage, and burst out the front door. The wolf was right behind her, snapping his terrible jaws. "Help!" Little Red cried. "Somebody help me." Now, as it happened, Little Red's father was working nearby that day. He heard his daughter scream and came running with his axe in hand. When the wolf saw the big, strong woodcutter charging toward him, he skidded to a stop. His yellow eyes went wide with fear. "Get away from my daughter!" the woodcutter roared. The wolf tried to run, but he tripped over grandmother's nightgown, which was far too long for him. He tumbled head over tail, rolled into a ditch, and found himself staring up at the furious woodcutter. "Please, please," the wolf whimpered, all his bravery gone. "Don't hurt me. I'm sorry. I'll never bother anyone again." Little Red's father grabbed the wolf by the scruff of his neck. "You're going somewhere you can't cause any more trouble," he said. And he marched the wolf straight to the village, where the mayor locked him in a sturdy cage. "Let this be a lesson," the mayor announced to the whole village. "Tricksters and bullies always get caught in the end." Back at the cottage, Little Red helped her grandmother out of the wardrobe. "Oh, grandmother," she cried, hugging her tight. "I'm so glad you're safe. I was so scared." Grandmother held her close and stroked her hair. There, my dear. We're both safe now, thanks to your father. But tell me, how did that wicked wolf know where I lived?" Little Red's cheeks turned as red as her hood. I talked to him in the forest. He seemed so friendly, and I didn't want to be rude. He asked where I was going, and I told him everything. "I'm sorry, grandmother. Mother told me not to talk to strangers, and I didn't listen. I'll never make that mistake again." Grandmother lifted Little Red's chin with a gentle finger. "The important thing is that you learned from it," she said kindly. "Not everyone who seems friendly has good intentions, but a wise person is one who learns from their mistakes and does better next time." Little Red nodded solemnly. "I promise, grandmother. I'll always stay on the path from now on, and I'll never tell strangers where we live." Her grandmother smiled and kissed her forehead. "That's my brave girl. Now I believe you mentioned something about bread and honey." Little Red laughed and fetched her basket. The bread was a little squashed from all the running, but grandmother said it was the most delicious bread she had ever tasted. And the wildflowers, even though they had gotten a bit rumpled, looked beautiful in a vase on the windowsill. That evening, Little Red's father walked her safely home through the forest. Her mother hugged her so tight that Little Red could barely breathe. "I was so worried when you were late," her mother said. "Thank goodness you're safe." "I'm sorry, Mother," Little Red said. "I should have listened to you. I promise I always will from now on." And she kept that promise. From that day forward, whenever Little Red Riding Hood walked through the forest to visit her grandmother, she stayed on the path. She didn't talk to strangers, and if anyone asked where she was going, she simply smiled and said, "Just for a walk." As for the wolf, he spent many long months in that cage, with nothing to do but think about all the trouble his tricks had caused. When he was finally released, he was a changed creature. He became a vegetarian, took up gardening and spent the rest of his days growing turnips and apologizing to everyone he had ever frightened. Little Red and her grandmother laughed about that for years. "Can you imagine?" Grandmother would chuckle. "A wolf growing turnips!" And every time Little Red visited, always on the path, always safely, Grandmother would have fresh cookies waiting, and they would sit by the fire until stars came out. Because that's what grandmothers and granddaughters do. They share stories, they share cookies, and most importantly, they share love. And they all lived happily, with full hearts and warm memories for the rest of their days. The end. Thank you so much for listening to today's fairy tale. I hope Little Red's story reminded you to always listen to the people who love you and to stay safe on your own adventures. If you'd like to hear more magical stories, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an adventure. Until next time, sweet dreams, little dreamers.